I was slipping through the forest, trying desperately to keep up with the others, and the sound of branches snapping behind me. It wasn't a deer. I knew that much. The snaps were too deliberate, too rhythmic, like footsteps. Like something or someone was pacing themselves, matching my speed, staying just far enough behind that I couldn't see them, but close enough that I knew they were there. It wasn't wolves either. I've heard wolves before. They move differently. They move like water, smooth and silent until they want you to hear them. This was different. This was calculated. And it definitely wasn't anything harmless. Someone, was following me through those dark woods, and I could feel their presence like a shadow I couldn't shake off. Have you ever felt watched? Really watched? Not just the casual glance of someone looking your way, but that deep, penetrating awareness that tells you someone's eyes are boring into the back of your head, studying you, analyzing you, maybe even hunting you? That's what this felt like. And I wasn't supposed to be here. That thought kept circling through my mind like a mantra. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to be here. But then he arrived. The Alpha Prince. And everything, absolutely everything, changed in that single moment. Let me paint you a picture. Can you see it? Close your eyes for just a second and imagine this with me. The moon was low that night, hanging in the sky like a giant silver coin, casting these long, ethereal shadows over the forest floor. The kind of shadows that make you question what's real and what's just your imagination playing tricks on you. You know those shadows, right? The ones that seem to move when you're not looking directly at them? The air smelled like pine, sharp and cold, and so crisp it almost hurt. The kind of scent that gets into your lungs and stays there, settling in your chest, making every breath feel both refreshing and slightly painful at the same time. It was the smell of wilderness, of untamed nature, of a world that existed long before humans decided they wanted to conquer it. I could hear the knights preparing their torches somewhere ahead of me. Their murmurs were getting louder, more excited, more eager. They were ready for this. They had been preparing for this hunt for weeks, maybe months. This was their element. This was what they lived for. But I couldn't focus on them. It was the horses. Their snorts, impatient and eager, cutting through the cool night air. They were pawing at the ground, tossing their magnificent heads, their muscles rippling beneath their glossy coats. They knew something I didn't. Animals always do, don't they? They sense things we can't. They feel the shift in the air, the change in energy, the approach of something significant. And me? I was tripping over roots, my cloak catching on every single branch like the forest itself was trying to hold me back, to stop me from going any further. I was silently cursing to myself, words I definitely shouldn't have been thinking in the presence of royalty, but honestly, I couldn't help it. Have you ever been so frustrated with yourself that you just want to scream, but you can't because there are people around and you have to maintain some semblance of composure? That was me. I'm sure the other hunters looked like they had stepped right out of a storybook.
You know the type.
Elegant, poised on horseback, sitting tall and proud, their cloaks billowing dramatically behind them in the breeze. Their faces set in determined expressions, their hands steady on the reins. Like they were born for this. Like hunting under the moonlight with a royal court was just another Tuesday evening for them. And then there was me, a lost villager at best. Probably looking more like a confused child who had wandered away from home rather than a participant in an exclusive royal hunt. Trying not to trip over my own feet every 3 steps. Trying not to look as terrified and out of place as I felt. Trying not to draw attention to myself. Spoiler alert, I failed spectacularly at that last part. And I did. Trip, that is.
Of course I did.
Because why wouldn't I? When you're trying your absolute hardest not to embarrass yourself, that's exactly when the universe decides to remind you that you're human and gravity exists and tree roots are apparently your mortal enemy. I felt my foot catch on a particularly thick root that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. 1 second the path was clear, and the next second my toe was hooked under something solid and unforgiving. I stumbled forward, my arms flailing in that universally ungraceful way people flail when they're about to fall, my heart pounding in my chest like it was trying to escape my ribcage. And my cloak, Well, let's just say it wasn't helping matters. It was twisting around my legs, tangling with my feet, basically doing everything in its power to ensure my complete and total humiliation. I managed to catch myself before I face-planted into the dirt, barely, but the damage was done. I had hoped nobody saw. I mean, it was dark, right? Everyone was focused on the hunt ahead, on the excitement of the chase, on their own preparations. Surely they hadn't noticed one awkward girl nearly eating dirt in the shadows. But I heard them. Whispers. Low and harsh, cutting through the night air like knives. Why is she even here? She's not trained for this. Look at her. She shouldn't even be on this hunt. She's going to get someone killed. Each word landed like a physical blow. Have you ever heard people talking about you? Not to you, but about you, like you're not even there? Like you're just an object to be discussed and judged and found wanting? It's a special kind of pain. I didn't let it show, though. I kept my head down, my eyes fixed on the ground in front of me, pretending I didn't hear them, pretending their words didn't sting, pretending I was perfectly fine and totally confident in my right to be there. But deep down, I knew it was true. Every single word. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't trained. I didn't belong with these people, these skilled hunters and warriors and members of the court. I was just me. Nobody special. Nobody important. Just a girl who had somehow ended up in completely the wrong place at completely the wrong time.
But why?
That question kept echoing in my mind. What was I even doing here? How had I ended up on a royal hunt, surrounded by people who clearly didn't want me there, stumbling through a dark forest in the middle of the night? I couldn't remember making the decision to join. It was like I had been pulled here by something beyond my control. Like invisible strings had guided my feet to this exact spot at this exact moment. And that feeling? That unsettling, unexplainable feeling? It was about to get so much worse. Then I felt it. His eyes. Have you ever felt someone looking at you? I mean, really looking at you? Not just a casual glance, not just a quick look over, but that intense, focused attention that makes your skin prickle and your breath catch in your throat? That's what this was. If you're still here, please give me a like, tell me your name, where you're watching from in the comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel as part of your great and wonderful support. Let's continue. I couldn't help but look up. I tried to resist. I told myself to keep my head down, to stay invisible, to not draw any more attention to myself than I already had. But I looked anyway. And there he was, the Alpha Prince. Now, I had heard stories about him. Everyone had. Whispers about his power, his strength, his absolute authority. Tales of his wolf form, supposedly the largest and most magnificent anyone had ever seen. Legends about his ability to command not just his own pack, but any wolf within miles. He was supposed to be untouchable, unreachable, more myth than man. But seeing him in person? The stories didn't do him justice. He wasn't glaring at me.
No.
That's what made it so unnerving. If he had been glaring, I could have understood that. I could have labeled it as disapproval or annoyance or disdain for the clumsy village girl who had somehow crashed his exclusive hunt. But this wasn't a glare. His eyes were glowing faintly, like embers in the darkness, like the reflection of moonlight on still water. They weren't fully human in that moment, and that should have terrified me. It should have set me running in the opposite direction as fast as my clumsy feet could carry me. But it didn't. Not with anger. Not with malice. Not with any of the negative emotions I would have expected. But with something else. Something I couldn't place. Something that made my heart race for entirely different reasons than fear. Recognition? That didn't make sense. How could he recognize me? We had never met. I was nobody. A villager. A commoner. Someone so far beneath his station that we might as well have existed in different worlds. But that look in his eyes, it was like he knew me. Like he had been searching for me. Like he had been waiting for this exact moment. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had somehow caught his attention in a way that went beyond simple curiosity. This wasn't the way you look at something unusual or out of place. This was the way you look at something you've been seeking. Something important. Something that matters.
But why?
Why me? Of all the people in that forest, All the skilled hunters, all the trained warriors, all the beautiful and talented members of the court. Why would the Alpha Prince's attention fix on me? I wasn't anything special. I wasn't anyone important. I was just a girl who didn't belong, stumbling through the darkness, trying not to fall on her face. Wasn't I? I kept telling myself it didn't matter, that I was reading too much into a simple glance. He was just some prince, after all. Royalty. Someone who lived in a completely different world than I did. Someone whose attention would move on to more important matters as soon as the hunt began. But why couldn't I stop thinking about the way his gaze had lingered on me? Seriously. Why couldn't I just dismiss it and move on? I tried. I really did. I forced myself to look away, to focus on the ground, on my footing, on anything other than those glowing eyes that seemed to see straight through me. But my mind wouldn't let it go. Why was he staring at me like that? I wasn't anyone important. I wasn't anyone special. I was literally the least remarkable person in that entire gathering. So, why did I feel like I was the only person he could see? And more importantly, why did that feeling simultaneously terrify me and thrill me in equal measure? Have you ever wanted something you knew you couldn't have? Something so far out of reach that even thinking about it felt dangerous? That's what this felt like. Like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing you should step back, knowing you should be smart and safe and sensible, but something deep inside you wants to lean forward, to see how it feels to fly, even if just for a moment. But in that moment, standing in the moonlit forest with the Alpha Prince's eyes on me, I felt like I was something else. Something I couldn't quite understand. Something that went beyond the simple categorization of village girl who doesn't belong. Why couldn't I blend into the crowd like I always did? That was my talent, my survival skill. I was excellent at being invisible, at fading into the background, at going unnoticed. It was how I got through life, without drawing unwanted attention or making waves.
But tonight?
Tonight, invisibility was apparently not an option. Why did he notice me? And why, despite all my fear and confusion and complete disorientation, did part of me, a part one didn't want to acknowledge, feel glad that he had? The murmurs of the other hunters grew louder around me, pulling me back to the immediate reality of my situation. She's going to ruin everything. The voice came from somewhere to my left, dripping with disdain. She's not trained. She's a liability. Another voice, this one from behind me, equally harsh. Why did they even let her in? This is supposed to be exclusive.
Elite.
A third voice, sharper than the others. I couldn't escape the whispers. They surrounded me like a swarm of insects, buzzing in my ears, each one a little sharper than the last. They were like daggers, cutting into my confidence with surgical precision, finding every weak spot, every insecurity, every doubt I had about my presence here. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, they were right. Every single criticism was valid. I wasn't trained. I was a liability. I shouldn't have been there. I had no business being on a royal hunt with people who had spent their entire lives preparing for moments like this. But the truth? I was doing my best to pretend they didn't bother me. I kept my face neutral, my expression blank, like I couldn't hear every single cutting comment. Pretend that I wasn't dying a little inside with each whispered criticism. Pretend that I belonged there just as much as anyone else, that I had every right to be standing in that forest under the moonlight. But when you're surrounded by hunters and warriors, people who can probably smell fear and insecurity like bloodhounds, pretending gets harder with each passing step. With each stumble, with each moment that highlights exactly how different you are from everyone else around you. I could feel their eyes on me, judging, assessing, finding me lacking. And then, just when I thought the night couldn't get any more intense, they did it. The horns blew, long and low and haunting. They released the hounds. The sound that followed was unlike anything I had ever heard before. The baying of hunting hounds is already an impressive sound, deep and musical and primal all at once. But when you're standing in a moonlit forest with dozens of the finest hunting dogs in the kingdom being released all at once, that sound becomes something almost otherworldly. It should have been exciting, thrilling, even. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the official start of the hunt. The hounds would catch the scent, they would lead us deeper into the forest, and the real excitement would begin. That's what should have happened. But something went wrong. Terribly, impossibly, completely wrong. Instead of putting their noses to the ground and following the scent trail that the handlers had laid earlier, the carefully prepared path that would lead us to the designated hunting grounds, something distracted them. Not something.
Someone.
The hounds, every single one of them, suddenly stopped in their tracks. Their excited baying cut off abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Their ears perked up, their bodies going rigid with attention. And then they turned, right toward me. I froze. Completely and totally froze. My breath stopped in my lungs. My heart stopped in my chest. Every muscle in my body locked up as I watched dozens of hunting hounds, trained killers really, when you think about what they're bred and trained to do, turn their collective attention in my direction. Every single one of them, their noses high, their eyes locked on me like I was the only thing in the entire forest that mattered. This was it, I thought. This was how I was going to die. Torn apart by hunting hounds in front of the Alpha Prince and half the royal court. What a way to go. But then, they did the last thing I expected. The absolute last thing I could have possibly anticipated in that moment. They bowed their heads.
To me.
Not in aggression. Not preparing to attack. Not even in the typical hunting posture. They bowed. Like subjects before their queen. Like wolves before their alpha. Like they recognized something in me that I didn't even recognize in myself. The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that forest. Every hunter, every warrior, every member of the court stood frozen, staring at the impossible scene before them. Hunting hounds don't do this.
They don't bow.
They certainly don't bow to random village girls who can barely walk through the forest without tripping over their own feet. And yet, here they were. I could feel the eyes of everyone on me now. Not just the Alpha Prince anymore, but everyone. The whispers had stopped. The criticisms had ceased. Everything had gone silent except for the pounding of my own heart in my ears. And the Alpha Prince's eyes, they widened slightly, like he had just realized something. Like a piece of a puzzle had just clicked into place in his mind. Something he had suspected, maybe, but hadn't been certain of until this very moment. Something I hadn't figured out yet. Something that was apparently written in my very scent, in my very presence, in whatever quality had made those hounds recognize me as something more than just a clumsy girl who didn't belong. And then, in the eerie silence that had fallen over the entire hunting party, he slowly dismounted from his horse. The movement was deliberate, controlled, almost ceremonial. He didn't jump down or swing off quickly like some of the other hunters did. No, this was measured, purposeful, like he was making a conscious choice with every movement. His feet hit the ground with barely a sound, despite his size and obvious strength. That's when I realized just how large he was. Seeing him on horseback was one thing, but standing on the ground, walking toward me, he was massive. Not in a bulky, muscle-bound way, but in that way that natural predators are large, powerful, dangerous, built for strength and speed and dominance. He walked toward me, each step bringing him closer, and I couldn't move. I couldn't run. I couldn't even step back. I was rooted to the spot, watching him approach like a deer watching a wolf circle closer, knowing it should flee, but somehow unable to make its legs work. The moonlight caught his silhouette, outlining him in silver, making him look almost ethereal, almost not quite real, like something from a dream, or maybe a nightmare. I couldn't decide which. His presence was almost overwhelming. Not threatening, exactly, but so intense that it made the air feel thicker, harder to breathe. Like the atmosphere itself was pressing down on me, crushing me under the weight of this moment. The other hunters had gone completely still. Even the horses had stopped their restless movements. Everything and everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. He stopped about 3 feet away from me, close enough that I could see the way the moonlight reflected in his eyes, making them almost luminous. Close enough that I could smell his scent, pine and leather, and something wild and indefinable. And then he spoke. "You smell like the moon," he said, his voice low and rough, like gravel and honey mixed together. The kind of voice that you feel in your chest as much as you hear with your ears. I blinked, completely confused. That had to be the strangest thing anyone had ever said to me. What did that even mean? How could someone smell like the moon? The moon didn't have a smell. It was a celestial body. It was rock and dust but he wasn't done. And that means everything is about to change. His words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication and meaning I couldn't begin to understand. I wanted to ask what he meant. I wanted to demand an explanation, to ask why the hounds had bowed to me, to ask what he saw when he looked at me, to ask what was happening, and why I felt like my entire world was tilting on its axis. But the words got stuck in my throat. All I could do was stand there, staring at him, while my mind raced through 1,000 different thoughts and came up with exactly 0 answers. Everything was changing. I could feel it. I could feel the shift happening in real time, like tectonic plates moving beneath my feet, rearranging the landscape of my entire existence. But I had no idea how. I had no idea what it meant to smell like the moon, or why that mattered, or why the Alpha Prince was looking at me like I had just solved a mystery he had been trying to crack for years. And I didn't know if I was ready for it. For any of it. For whatever came next. Because something was coming. I could feel it in my bones. In the way the air had changed. In the way every person in that forest was holding their breath, waiting for something momentous to happen. My life, such as it was over. Whatever came next, it was going to be something entirely different. Something I couldn't have predicted. Something I couldn't have prepared for. Something that started the moment those hounds bowed their heads, and the Alpha Prince looked at me like he finally understood a secret the universe had been keeping from him. So, here I am, caught in a moment I can't escape. Standing in a moonlit forest, surrounded by people who think I don't belong, with hunting hounds bowed before me like I'm someone important, and the Alpha Prince staring at me like I'm the answer to a question he didn't know he was asking. I wasn't supposed to be here. I'm still not sure why I'm here. How I ended up on this hunt, in this moment, at this exact point in time where everything seems to be converging into something bigger than I can comprehend. Was it chance? Coincidence? Just blind luck that I happened to join the royal hunt on the exact night that— What was happening? What had I triggered by being here? Or was it something else? Something more deliberate? Were there forces at work beyond my understanding, pulling strings, arranging circumstances, making sure I ended up in exactly this spot at exactly this moment? I don't know. I honestly don't know. But now, with the Alpha Prince watching me with those glowing eyes, with the hounds still bowed before me, with the entire hunting party frozen in shock and confusion, and maybe even fear, I know I'm in the middle of something much bigger than myself. Something ancient, maybe. Something powerful. Something that has been waiting for this moment, for me to stumble into it like the clumsy, unprepared girl I am. And I can't turn back.
Not now.
Not after what happened tonight. Even if I wanted to, and part of me desperately wants to run, to flee back to my simple life where the most complicated decision I had to make was what to have for dinner, I know it's too late. The hounds recognized me. The Alpha Prince saw something in me. Something has been set in motion that I can't stop, can't reverse, can't undo. The question is, what happens next? What does it mean to smell like the moon? Why did those hounds bow to me? What did the Alpha Prince realize in that moment when his eyes widened with recognition? And more importantly, who am I really? Because I'm starting to suspect that I'm not just some random village girl who accidentally crashed a royal hunt. I'm starting to suspect that my being here wasn't an accident at all. I'm starting to suspect that everything I thought I knew about myself, about my life, about my place in this world, might be wrong. And that terrifies me more than anything else. Because if I'm not who I thought I was, then who am I? What am I? And what role am I supposed to play in whatever is coming next? The Alpha Prince is still standing there, still watching me, still waiting for something. For me to react?
To speak?
To acknowledge whatever truth he seems to think I should know? But I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm just as confused and lost as I was when I first stumbled into this forest. Maybe even more so now. All I know is that the moon is watching. The forest is listening. The hounds are waiting. And the Alpha Prince, he's looking at me like I'm the beginning of something. Or maybe the end. Or maybe both.